So did you miss something today because you were looking at your phone? I don't know, something that someone said to you? What? Huh? Something wonderful that your child did for the first time and they're never going to ever do it again for the first time. And you were liking a picture of someone else's kid when it happened. The sound of an oncoming vehicle. Did you miss that? If you own a phone and you didn't do it today, I'm going to say there's a 100% chance that you just lied when I asked you that question. Because come on, if you got a phone, you missed something today. That's just it. I answered yes to that question based on stuff that's happened to me in the last 10 minutes. Much like global warming, the end user often feels the guilt of these massive problems, such as phone addiction. And much like global warming, it's a deliberate play by the people who not only create the devices, but also the apps that run on them. The argument that we are choosing to consume the product, so therefore we're responsible for the consequences. It's a classic. It was used by the tobacco industry for a very long time. My guest today is here to tell you that is bullshit. It's time to resist and it's time to fight back, because we are not just missing what somebody said, we are losing so much about what makes us human and what things make our society work well. The fire has absolutely started. The alarm is going off, but the fire department's not coming. There's no lawyers coming to regulate these gargantuan companies, at least not as quickly as we need them to. My guest today is Professor Gaia Bernstein. She's written a fantastic book called Unwired, Gaining Control Over Addictive Technologies. And rather than blaming users, the book really shatters the illusion that we autonomously choose how to spend our time online. It shifts the moral responsibility and accountability for the solutions that we seek onto the corporations that derive profit from this situation. Drawing lessons from the tobacco and the food industries, her book also demonstrates why government regulation is necessary to curb technology addiction. If you're concerned about your screen time or what too much screen time is doing to you, let alone your kids, this episode is an epic. Professor Gaia Bernstein offers some excellent tools to deal with managing this device that we need to engage with modern society, but also some ways that we can do that and maintain our humanity. Enjoy. Good morning, Gaia, or good evening. How are you today?
I'm good. It's good evening here in New York.
I'm so grateful we could speak today. It's an extraordinarily important thing to talk about. I'm nearly 50, Gaia, so I remember a time before the cultural bifurcation that we live in now. You know, I remember us going in Australia, going from 3 channels to 4 channels to 5 to now there's like 4 people in my city that have a cell phone. And then a month later, there was 8. And then a month later, it just went from there, double. And then I think I was 20 when I got my first GSM phone that couldn't even text back then.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then slowly over time, you know, so I have borne witness to my own brain before, during, and now after extraordinary stimulus exposure. But, you know, we have 2 kids in our house. We have one who's just turned 19 and the other one who's nearly 4. And yeah, they're both digital natives, and reading your book is terrifying, but also full of hope, because you wonderfully, with enormous amounts of robust research, back up what a lot of my and many parents and, you know, other people's worries are around screen time. And to say that's an epidemic, people might think it's hyperbole, but is it really an epidemic, Gaia?
I think it's beyond an epidemic. I think it's been going on for so long, it's become a reality. And that is the big problem. It's not something that came and we're paying attention to it and now we are going to deal with it. We did not notice what was happening for so long.
And that's an interesting thing that you bring up in the book, in that we never really consented to being manipulated. People may think that when they use their phones, they're not being manipulated. What would you say to that?
I would say that they are manipulated, but it's invisible. And it's so manipulative that even people like I, who know about it, I tend to forget and overuse my phone, because tech companies have designed the products, the phones or the apps in a way that makes us stay online for much longer than we intended to, but we don't see it and we don't know why when we pick up our phones to check our emails, we end up staying there for another half an hour doing nothing, basically.
And it's not by accident that this is how our phones have captured us, is it?
No, it's not. It's basically a business model. The whole internet economy is based on this business model, which has two resources. One is our data, which is privacy and things people have been talking about for longer now. And the other is our time. So basically, in order to collect our data, tech companies need to keep us online for as long as possible. And then the goal is to target advertising at us using this data. So again, they want us online for as long as possible so we can see the advertising and they can sell products through the advertising, because we have to remember that everything is free. Gmail is free. Facebook is free. So this is the way they make money. We don't pay with money, we pay with our time and our data.
And by data, you mean not only where we are in the world, which is our physical location, which is previously to 2007 was extraordinarily private and something we would never tell a stranger, but also what we're looking at. And sometimes every single word we speak out of our mouths, because our microphones stay open because we've given them permissions and our phones listen to us.
Right. They collect vast amounts of data in order to give us these very, very targeted advertising. If you go on Facebook, the kind of advertising you would get is very different from the advertising I would get.
For people who are listening, they kind of know that they're in it, and even you, someone who knows all about this stuff, you're a professor, you practice law, you know all about this. Like hearing you saying, even I spend more time on my phone than I want to. How can any of us have any hope, Gaia?
Well, I think we have been. The problem is there's been lack of awareness. I think since 2017, 18, there's been much more awareness. There's been reports from Silicon Valley about how tech companies manipulate us. And unfortunately, at that point, the pandemic hit and everybody went on screens. But I think at this point, there's enough awareness. And the main thing I'm trying to say, we tend to blame ourselves. So we say, I spend too much time on my phone, my kids spend too much time playing games, and we're so focused on figuring out how to control ourselves that we are not doing what really needs to be done, is taking the fight to the public sphere, because things will not change until technology companies change the way they design their products. And there are ways to make movement, but they're not by fighting at home.
And this is the thing that I found fascinating reading in your book, is the parallels that I could see. You draw it often to smoking and I'm old enough to remember the fights against smoking regulation from the tobacco industry, but as well in many ways the structured and systemic blaming of the individual for global warming by fossil fuel companies. I believe it was BP who paid a PR agency to come up with the words carbon footprint. So therefore, it's the end user who's the one that's responsible for killing the planet. It's not us who know the people that are, spewing squillions of tons a day of carbon monoxide and methane into the air. And by putting it on the end user, we walk around with this guilt like, oh, it must be my fault. Oh, my kid can't look up from her phone. Oh, I'm a terrible parent. But that's not really it, is it?
No, I think this is basically the tech companies have adopted a strategy that's not innovative at all. Basically, throughout history, companies, big industries, whenever it was found out they were actually harming their consumers, the first argument they made is, you chose to use our product, so you're responsible. So with tobacco companies, when smokers went to courts to sue the tobacco companies, tobacco companies argued in court that the smokers chose to smoke and therefore they're responsible for lung cancer and their impending death. And they won for decades. It's a very successful strategy. Same with junk food. exactly the same thing happened when a group of teens sued McDonald's here in New York because they were sick with diabetes and they were obese. And McDonald's did the same thing. They argued, well, nobody forced you to eat at McDonald's. Nobody forced you to supersize. And again, they won because the court said, the teens are responsible. So the tech companies adopted this idea, but I think what's interesting is they took it one step more forward, because they're not just blaming. Game makers actually did blame, parents and the kids for choosing to play. But they also gave us these tools, what they call digital well-being tools. So the moment the truth started coming out that they're addicting us on purpose, they came up with screen time. If you have an iPhone, you can see how much time you spend on your phone. You can even limit how much time you spend on apps. You can, on Instagram, you could get notifications. You can set up notifications for your kids. But these tools were not meant to succeed because they never eliminate the really addictive features. The whole purpose of this is to make us feel we've given you tools. It's under your control. If you chose not to use them, it's your fault. So I think that is what's so incredible. And that's what's also making so many people blame themselves.
I don't know if you saw my face when you were talking about the self-limiting tools, and I've spoken on this podcast many times. I think I have tried 3 separate elimination strategies on my phone. I've lost count of how many times I've deleted Instagram off my phone. I have 2 separate apps on there right now that are supposed to block me from using it. I went through a whole phase of giving my wife my screen time passcode, like a 10-year-old boy, and it still doesn't work. And I'm 13 years sober. I know how addiction works, and I can't stop fucking using it. So why is it like this?
Well, why is it like that? I think that there are 2 things operating here. First of all, it's the nature of screens. It's like if you want to abstain from smoking or alcohol, you can not go to a bar, you cannot order alcohol, you cannot keep alcohol in your home, or you cannot buy cigarettes. But with screens, you cannot avoid them because that's part of life. So it's very hard to get away. You need a phone and you need to be on your computer or your iPad. The second thing is what the tech companies did was they took our most vulnerable parts and they took these principles and they made designs to fit them. So I'll give an example. So there was a famous experiment about soup. One group was given a bowl of soup and they ate the soup. Another group was given a bowl of soup which had no bottom. So they ate 70% more.
Oh my goodness.
They had no stopping cues.
All right. So the soup had like some sort of hole in the bottom and they just kind of pumped more soup into it.
Right.
Wow.
And that's exactly what's happening online. They took away our stopping cues. So if you think about the infinite scroll on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, there's never an end to a page. Just keep going and going and going. And that's why you spend so much time online. And this is just one example out of many of what they did.
And so we might think that we have a choice to pick up our phone. We might think we have a choice of when we do and don't scroll. Why is that not true?
So, what's so confusing about it is that sometimes we can manage. So we think we have a choice. And me, I'm a professor. So if I have to prepare a class, or I have to prepare a conference talk, I am going to be able not to waste my time online, which gives me the sense that I have a choice while I actually don't, because there's something so mindless about it. So unless you really, really are under time pressure, you won't even notice how you start scrolling. And on top of that, they use this strategy called intermittent reward model. So that's something that's been used for years with slot machines. Because you see people pulling the slot machine handle, so they keep pulling and pulling. Why do they do that? Because once in a while they get money. Once in a while, when you get the rewards on an irregular basis, your brain releases more of the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is responsible for pleasure. So all over the internet, we get rewards on an intermittent basis, whether it's comments or likes. Sometimes I post something on Facebook and nobody responds. Sometimes I get lots of likes and I get lots of comments, and I don't even know why certain things do and certain things don't. And that's exactly the point. And it's everywhere. You go on Tinder and you swipe. Sometimes you get a match and sometimes you don't. And even emails, you keep getting notifications. You don't know if it's an important email, so you keep checking, and this dopamine burst every time you get a notification. So it's so difficult if you're restless and you don't know what to do. The first thing you do is go and check your email, your text, your Facebook.
It's so difficult to not see this as sinister, Gaia. You write in your book about abusive design, and those two words together just floor me. I lived in America for 10 years. I spent time in San Francisco. Like, I was pitching an app. I was trying to do the whole thing, right? I've met these people. I've met these coders. I've met these people. And in Stanford University in San Francisco, just out of San Francisco, there is a lab, the Persuasive Design Lab, and a Dr. BJ Fogg worked there. Yeah. And it was basically teaching people exactly how to do what you do, and then brilliantly, in a very kind of American, well, we're just providing the details of how to build a bomb. It's up to you whether you want to use it or not. And of course, these guys went and pissed off and made Farmville or whatever, and it's insidious, and it hurts me that people would do that.
Right, and I think it's even more confusing because these guys for decades portray themselves as the good guys. I mean, Google's motto was do no evil, and Facebook was there to connect the world. And unlike other corporations for history, they always talked about how they're there to make the world better. And combining that with the fact that somehow we believe that, technology will increase human welfare, will bring progress, it's hard to believe that actually more technology could do something like that. And I think now, actually, with ChatGPT coming out, people are realizing for the first time that maybe more technology is not always better, especially information technology. I think some technologies we knew were not great.
Tell me about this, the idea of abusive design. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think the idea of abusive design, it's basically that you are being manipulated in a covert way, that you're losing your autonomy. You're no longer making your own decisions. So what happened to us, of course, we made a decision to, download Facebook or to download a game. We make small decisions. But we didn't realize that while doing that, we were actually making a huge decision over how we spend our time, which is our most important resource. Adults spend 5 hours on their time alone. I doubt if people were asked around 2009, when this started spiraling out of control, whether they wanted to spend 5 hours on their phone, and I'm sure they would say no. But they never really realized they were making this decision, because when I started texting on my way to work and started answering emails and downloading Facebook, I did not realize that within a couple of months, I will not even look up for my phone, and somebody could be sitting next to me on the train, a colleague, a student, I would not see them. I never thought this is where this will go. None of us did. So that's what manipulative design does to you, abusive design. It manipulates you to make decisions you would have not done if you had realized what decision you were making.
For me, who's, as I said, I'm nearly 50, for me, I knew I was the frog, and I knew I was jumping in the frying pan, and I knew the water was getting warmer. But every time the water got a little bit warmer, it felt just comfortable enough to be like, oh yeah, but I'll stay. The view's nice, because the utility of what was being offered to me, as you mentioned, things like Gmail free. I use Gmail. The utility was so great, I didn't mind giving away what I was giving away. I have since put safeguards in my privacy around, with VPNs and such. But when I see, the younger people in my life, they just have no idea what they're giving away because they've never known to not give it away.
Right. They don't know a different world and also the impact on them. The data that's basically, I look at the book, last 2 or 3 years, the studies, if before there was a debate about the harms, I think for children, there's no doubt there's a public health crisis at this point. Impact.
We talk about, in your book, you write about the way that children's brains are affected by screen time and using these apps that are designed to, make the brain work in particular ways and robbing the child of the ability to make a choice. We know a lot about what sugar does to kids. We know what smoking does to kids. We know what lack of enough calories or alcohol abuse of the mother does to kids. We know what alcohol does to a kid's brain, right? If they, prefrontal cortex doesn't finish developing till 25. What does the science tell us about what happens to a child's brain for using screens?
So I think at first we had psychology studies who just looked at the impact on cognitive development, and they saw that people who were exposed to more screens had lower test results, and the learning and ability to read was affected. And the early studies were done on kids who were addicted to gaming, and many of them qualified to being clinically addicted to a point that they would drop out of school and would be unable to function despite all these bad consequences happening to them. They wouldn't get off. And so 2 interesting studies when you look at the images. So for cognitive development, the brain imaging studies show that if you look at the brains of kids who were exposed to excessive screen time, above the American Pediatric Association recommendations, which compared to the control group, you can see that their brains look different in the areas which are responsible for cognitive development. And the differences are related to white matter areas, which are related to speed of transmitting information. And this is correlated to inferior results in cognitive testing. For kids who were playing games, it was interesting. They saw that the brains look similar to the brains of adults who were addicted to gambling, which is another behavioral addiction. So then there's more and more brain scanning studies coming out every day now, which is backing the already very concerning findings about mental health, cognitive development, and other things.
And emotionally, what's the difference between a child that is using screens excessively or, I'm assuming like the recent studies around alcohol, the safe amount of alcohol to drink? None. I'm assuming that that's a similar amount of screen time. What's the emotional impact of a child in their home or at school who has too much screen time or is showing signs of too much screen time?
Because, of course, it's all statistical. Some kids will not be affected as much as others. But the statistics show that from around 2010, there's been a huge increase in the United States, at least, where many of the studies were done, in suicide rates, anxiety, and depression. And at first, it was unclear what exactly was the cause because, of course, screens and social networks were a big thing that was investigated, but there were other potential issues, maybe overparenting, parents overbearing, not giving their kids enough autonomy. But after enough data has been collected, especially, as I said, over the last 2 or 3 years, it's very clear that it's related to screen time, especially social networks, and especially for girls. And so it's the results are granular and alarming at the same time.
Anyone that's sat next to you've got 3 children, I've got 2, and so I've been around teenagers for a number of years now, because they're in a house, and you'd sit down and you watch, and a kid will open their phone and they will open Snapchat and they will check on a map to see where everybody is. And I remember just the other day, I watched one of these kids who was around here do it 3 times in 10 minutes. This person's sitting in a room full of their friends.
Right. And that's exactly some of the studies show the impact on, even if you don't qualify for anxiety, depression, social disconnection, loneliness. There are some studies which related to happiness studies that we've always known that people are happier when they have, long-term relationships. But these studies also show that our happiness is related to very short interactions, just talking to somebody in the street, instead of walking, which I too often do, with my earphones and my phone. If I would just walk around and smile at people, I'm likely to feel much better. And the thing is, when kids are staying home and with their phones and they're not hanging out with other kids, and the studies show that it's gone down by 50% in the last 15 years or so, they're not getting these moments which actually give them a feeling of pleasure and happiness. So there's a general feeling of discontent, loneliness, lack of connection.
I guess the other thing that really bothers me, and I saw it quite early, is that, the punishment, take your phone away, it would be so horrible to do because this technology, what's her name? Sherry Turkle, the idea that, the technology has kind of put itself, it's the architect of our intimacy is the word that she used. Beautiful. It's between you and I right now. It is the thing that is, the way that I connect with the people I love in my life is all through the same device I don't want to use for other things. It's the way that I tell people I love them. It's the way I talk to my doctor. It's the way that I FaceTime my kids when I'm away. It's put itself between me and the most important things in my life. And there's nothing I could do about it.
Well, I think this is a very important point because in no way are we going back to a screenless, unconnected world. This is not going to happen.
No.
I mean, the ability to talk to your doctor or to your kids when you're away, these things are great and they should stay in all this information we have. The thing is, because we never made a conscious decision, we never really decide how this balance between online and offline life should look like. And we sort of lacking the imagination because we never pause to think. And one of the main argument I'm making is that by applying pressure on tech companies to redesign their products, we could have products which are not designed to addict us. And it's taking out these addictive elements, applying pressure on this business model. If the business model would not have been to have us stay online for as long as possible, we might have very different technologies which would have more of the good but less of the bad.
The profit that is driving this, our attention, is astonishing, and trying to decouple the profit model from our attention sucking it's a steep slope. But I want to get to that because I keep hearing what you're talking about and what we're discussing. And as I said, I've been sober for a while now, and so I'm aware of the different forms of addiction. And this one, it really kind of strikes me as it's a little similar to food addiction in that the abstinence model just doesn't work. You need food. There are people who are hopelessly addicted to binge eating, hopelessly addicted to food, and watching people with food addiction try to eat a meal it's tough to see the things they have to do to stop themselves from just gorging to the point of wanting to vomit. But it's a really hard one, food addiction. And that's the kind of like the analog that I would say for me is like that's kind of how I might be able to put this into my brain of how we might be able to deal with this.
So I think the analogy to food is very useful here because, food is like technology. It's a mixture of good and bad. We need food to subsist. On the other hand, I've never seen anybody gorging on carrots, for example. So
yes,
and junk food, food companies do exactly the same thing like what technology companies do.
Oh, I've read Fast Food Nation. I know all about that lab.
Right. And they make it impossible for us to really know what's in the products. We try to eat food that's not processed and good for us, and they manage to hide it. So we won't even know, and we will keep eating, thinking we're eating baked chips and this is better. We don't know why we just ate a whole bag. So I think there's a similar conflict going on, and it is as complicated because it's hard to separate.
We talked about tobacco earlier and the fast food industry and the arguments that they use to shut down the legal claims against them. Eventually, it took a good couple of decades, but eventually the tobacco companies started to lose. And then the vaping shows up and we start again. But what lessons can we learn from those battles when it comes to what clearly needs to happen, which is an upstream solution, which is legislation? What can we learn about what happened with tobacco and fast food?
So I think there are lots of things we can learn. I'll just give a few examples. So first of all, where does this argument of self-choice and self-responsibility start failing? So it starts failing when there's evidence of intent to addict. And that's what happened with the tobacco lawsuits. For decades, tobacco companies won, and then evidence finally came out from tobacco companies that they were on purpose, they knew nicotine was addictive, they were manipulating it to addict smokers. They started losing the battles, and smokers started winning. And so we already have this evidence for technology. Frances Hogan, who worked for Facebook, testified to the US Congress describing exactly how Facebook, that owns Instagram, knew that kids, especially girls, were affected, their mental health was deteriorating. They knew it was related to how much time they spent online, and they decided to ignore it because their profits were dependent on the algorithms that made that happen. So that's an important thing to know, that we're already at the stage that we have the information.
Yeah.
The second thing is children, because we don't think about children as choice makers. We think that we make the choices for them and that we don't think of them as responsible. So it's easier for us to make paternalistic choices for them. And so, for example, kids cannot buy cigarettes. Adults can still buy cigarettes.
Yeah.
There's lots of talk now about limiting kids from going on social networks. And it's easier for regulators to make these decisions for children because children should be protected. Mm-hmm. We saw this with food as well. There's a requirement here that schools have to weigh kids and to send their BMI to parents to fight obesity. So this is something that would never be done to adults. You would never go to work and have to weigh yourself.
No.
So I think children, and the good thing about this, because if things start changing for children, there are some bills that are trying to outlaw addictive features for children. It's very complicated to just outlaw it for children. You can see how the pressure could change things for all of us. And I think that's important.
Do we need to find evidence that the loop that you mentioned earlier, the trigger, action, reward, investment hook, and we just go around, is it so proving evidence that this is written into the coding and like we can show that the likes are manipulated to not be regular? Like how do you even prove this stuff?
Well, I think at this point, there have been so many whistleblowers coming from different companies in Silicon Valley describing what happened. Mm-hmm. And there are internal documents that were leaked describing what happened. So I don't think that's the problem. The problem is that as long as we have the business model, even if we show that certain things like the infinite scroll or likes or comments are a problem, and even if things are changed there, as long as the business model is to keep us online for as long as possible, I'm sure tech companies will innovate with new things that at first we won't even know because these things are invisible.
Yeah, but is it like putting filters on cigarettes? Like, I'm old. I remember, hey, now right. Filtered. Like, fuck off, mate. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that was the thing, that would be something to compare it to. It's like, it's got a filter on it. Off you pop, there you go, you'll be fine. 25 milligrams of tar, get in.
Right, and that's screen time is the filter. When Facebook opened privacy cafes in London, that was like the filter. They were helping people put their privacy settings in place.
What are some different business models that might work. I mean, you're in America. It is very much a market-driven society. It's interesting how, in the States they seem to have this idea that the market will always decide it, and any intervention is like, how dare the government get into my life? It's a wild thing that they have over there, but because it bases itself on the idea that we have a choice, but what you're describing is we don't have a choice here. So what kind of interventions could a government do that might be effective, yet still allow these innovations and things that improve our lives to happen?
I think that when there'll be enough pressure on these addictive designs and on the business model through antitrust. For example, right now Meta owns Facebook, owns Instagram, and owns WhatsApp. If antitrust action succeeds and they're broken up and there's more competition, I think we'll see more innovation. And I can suggest other modes, other models like subscription or pay-as-you-go. Imagine if you have to pay for every minute you spend on social networks, you might think twice, especially kids. But I think that the pressure to change could bring up new models that neither you nor I can imagine through the free market. And that's my hope. But the fact right now, this has been so dominant that we can't even imagine a different world.
See, the idea, as soon as you said pay as you go, the idea of, okay, well, Minecraft is $0.01 a minute. All right, off you go. It's cheap. Off you go. And next thing I'm thinking, and you re-up it by getting a card at the supermarket that you scan, right? The next thing is like you've got this addicted kid screaming at the parent, not for the lollies or the candy in the supermarket aisle, but for the Minecraft discount card, so the kid can have more time.
Well, my hope would be that if Minecraft is pay as you go and they make money a different way, they would take away some of the addictive features on the game.
Right.
So the kid will not be as addicted. And Minecraft has been voted to be the most addictive game of all times, yet sold as an educational game.
But we're teaching our children. Come on, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It is dystopian and terrifying, and it sounds like we're coming close to a point where, there's going to be a moment where we're going to make a call. I hope it doesn't get too bad, but you said before, earlier in our conversation, that the idea that we can do something about it isn't the thing that we should hold on to. But surely there's something that you talk about. Detoxes in the book. You talk about a digital detox in the book. What can we do ourselves to protect ourselves? Like, what's the us putting a seatbelt on when we get in the car?
So I think there are two things. I think we are in transition stage. I think there's more awareness, there's more activity legally of class actions and political activity than ever before. But I do think it will take time, and that's what all the studies into the past showed. Lots of pressure in different ways. I think people can do things at home. They should try to avoid, first of all, having, their phones in the dinner table, or taking the kids with an iPad to a restaurant, or even adopting new norms. I went on a vacation and I saw kids in the pool, 2 girls. The mom gave them plastic pouches to put the iPhone in there when they're in the pool, so they could be in the iPhone in the pool. That's the kind of direction you may not want to go in.
Oh my God.
So that is one thing. But I do think it's not just for lawyers. I think adults are also professionals. If you're an adult and you are in a startup business, maybe you want to think about a model that does not operate on time as a resource. If you're a designer, maybe you can think, is the feature I'm designed just to get people going back to the platform and nothing else? There's no content, there's nothing. Do I want to design this? If you're a restaurant owner, through COVID, lots of restaurants here started using QR codes. Mm-hmm. Many did not go back to menus. So do you want to have a QR code so people put the phones on the table the moment they start dinner? Or do you want to put a menu? So I think we can change spaces, and especially I think we can change schools, which is the most important place.
This is, you do write about this as the idea of changing a physical space. Now, this may seem like a wild concept to people. Like, how can you change a room How can he change a room so people don't use their phones so much? What are some ways that we can do that, perhaps in our own homes, in our workplaces, and in a public place?
So I think I'll give some examples. First of all, you may remember that bars used to be full of smoke, right?
Damn,
we could not, in the
disgusting.
1980s, we could not imagine that there will be no cigarettes in a bar. Right now, we cannot imagine a bar without every person having their phone right next to them.
Yeah.
So things can change. I want to start from that. But there are ways to design for overuse. Many airports have iPads on all tables. So you have, in all New York airports, have 4 iPads on every table. You could not you cannot even put your book, you have no space. So that's a way to design for overuse. You can design differently. You can make decisions differently. You can incentivize people. I've seen restaurants putting signs, put your phone away and dessert is on us. And classrooms are very important because that's, if kids are on screen all day in school, it filters into the home. If schoolwork is on screen, so is homework. There's no way you can tell what the kid is doing at that point. And also, the school is legitimizing things like Minecraft or TikTok, where teachers are not posting lectures.
I have mates who tried really hard, Gaia, to have their kids not have screens for a long time. I remember one of my mates, his son was 10, said he doesn't even know what an iPad looks like. That was pretty good to get him to 10. But then they moved to a bigger city, and now it's bring your own device. And now suddenly this kid's on there, and parents justify it. It's like, well, the kid kind of needs to know how to use it because that's where the world is going. Where's the balance there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the conflict. I think on the one hand, we feel like our kids need technology because otherwise they won't be able to function in the world. I do think there's a balance, though. I think right now in many, many countries all over the world, the policy is maximizing technology in the classroom. So nothing is examined. Is it better than a teacher or not? The studies have actually not shown. To the contrary, they've shown that live teachers are better teachers than screens. So instead of that, if you just switch it around, saying we can use screens in the classroom if they're doing something helpful. If they're learning how to code, for example. If kids are maybe willing to practice, if you give them some quizzes. But you have to check it. And at the same time, limit how much time kids can spend according to age on the screens in school. There are lots of things that can be done, which are not done.
The terrible thing about all this, Guy, is it's the thing, I can't remember the name of the chemical that McDonald's put on their fries, but it's that thing that you eat one and go, oh, and then you can't stop. It's this idea of like, what do you mean go to dinner without taking an iPad in case my kid starts to lose their shit? What do you mean have a teacher try to look after an overcrowded classroom without being able to, at least once a day say, okay, kids, get on that 20 minutes. As an adult, you have that moment of like, I can't not have that. That's the only time I get to stack the dishwasher,
Yeah, I agree. It's very hard. I think the only thing is when the kids are smaller, in a way, it's easier because you're still making the decisions for them.
Yeah.
Once they get to middle school, unless things change, you can't make any decisions. So your only way to instill norms is when the kids are smaller and you're the decision maker.
Speaking of giving children iPads, taking an iPad off a child is a whole other ball game. When you write about digital detox, the come down, the cold turkey, it's got so many similarities to drug addiction.
Right, but if the iPad did not have games for kids which are based on intermittent reward, if things were more predictable, if the design was different, if there was an end to a game, now there's never an end to a game, it will not be so hard to take the iPad. We cannot imagine it, but it doesn't have to be designed this way.
Yeah. Do you recommend spending time away from your phone? Like the idea of not touching my phone for a day is a lot for me to even think about because of how much I use it and how I use it in my life. Is this something that you think we should do as an end user?
Okay, I'll be honest, I could not do that. Maybe that's why I'm effective writing about this, because I really feel the pain of this. I could not do this. I sometimes leave the house and I forget my phone and I get very anxious and I need to go back to get it. So I think I cannot propose things. Some people maybe have an easier time. If they can do it, that would be great, but it's not easy for a lot of people. And once you have parents and you have children, it's like society expects you to have a phone because they expect to reach you.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted thing, isn't it? Because in some ways, it's oh no, I've got to get them a phone because I have to be for safety. I've got to get them a phone. There's bad people out there, but when you think about it, like yes, there are bad people out there, but it's the infinitesimally small chances that your kid will actually get snatched off the street. It doesn't equal the reality. And that's tough for people to accept. They want to be able to feel they're doing something by giving a kid a phone. Oh, kid's safer. Great. But what have you done? You've put the phone in their hand and now they're speaking to someone in a chat room and what do you know?
Of course. But also everything has changed around. You gave the kids the phone. The public phones have disappeared. Now it's really a problem because they cannot find a phone if they need one.
Yeah, it's so tough to deal with. What are our steps from here as parents, as people who maybe aren't parents, and people who are listening to this? People are listening to this on a phone right now, so I couldn't be without my podcast. I love my podcast. I do everything listening to a podcast. What's some steps that we can take today to help free us and be at least aware of?
I think if you have small kids, I think you should think very carefully about the norms you are instilling in them. I think that if you have kids who are in middle school, you can talk to them about it. Nobody likes being manipulated. Maybe remind them how they felt during the pandemic when they sat at home in front of the screens, how their body felt, how they felt mentally. And I think as a person who is part of our society, think what can you do collectively in your professional capacity. I think that's the most effective place, whether you run a business or, as I said, you're a designer, whatever you do that you can change things. And yes, and there are many parents that are doing things legally. They're advocating for bills. There's joining class actions. That's if you want to be a legal activist. But I'm not trying to say that this is a movement for lawyers alone. I think there are lots of things that people can do, and also influencing the schools the kids attend to. Many schools can be influenced on an individual level or in district level, and that would make a big difference. Because if you convince the school not to have computers or to have them less, or not assign homework on computers for a few more years, you've gained years. In the meantime, things, I believe, are going to change here.
We talked about screen time being the filter on the cigarette. It's like, look, it's a filter now. It's like, yeah, you've got screen time. We're all safe. We take your health seriously. What are some things, though, that we can adjust on our own phones to try to protect us or try to protect our kids?
Okay, I'll say this, but with a grain of salt, because I think that, yes, I've seen people find things that are effective for themselves. For example, when I tried to write, I put a timer on my phone for 20 minutes. I close all my windows. And until it rings, I don't check my email. Then I check everything and then I restart this again. I know some people who had a problem with a specific app. So they deleted that app and they managed to go for a few months without it, which was good. But the main thing I want to say, if it doesn't work out, don't sit there and blame yourself or blame your kid. If your parental controls don't work out, don't be surprised because they're not really meant to succeed. And just think about what else you can do. Don't put all your efforts into this self-control and home battles.
Who are some people that we can look to that are, leaders in this space? The one name that comes to my mind is Tristan Harris, as someone who's a leader in this space, someone we can look to as far as which directions we can start pressuring, bigger corporations and governments.
So Tristan Harris is, I think there is not, that's the interesting thing. That's really why I wrote the book. I think nobody's really looked at the whole picture of what's happening legally. And that's why I try to draw a picture to show that there's lots of efforts. There are lots of groups in different countries, in Europe as well. Lots of things were done, but there's not just one big organization that does it. So there are different organizations, some working to protect kids in one country, pressuring the Federal Trade Commission in the US. But I think that's what we need to start thinking about, to sort of build more bodies that will collaborate and look at it as a movement and not as individual efforts of one congressman here, one bill in the UK. There has to be more, in the same way if you think about obviously climate is, but actually it's a bit like the climate change movement. I think it's affecting the same generation, and it is a global issue. And I think that movement is much more organized. And in a way, this is something, technology, information has no borders.
If you could say, what is the thing we're fighting against? I have a T-shirt that says Australian Parents for Climate Action. Boom. Does what it says on the box. What is the distilled thing that we are fighting against here, Gaia?
We are fighting to regain control of our time, to make decision of how much time we spend on the screen and to have it be our decision, not something dictated to us.
Thank you for writing this book, honestly, because to read it it gave me the feeling, I'm not alone. It's not just me. And, I'm not a weak-willed piece of shit. Like, I got to stop thinking that. It isn't, I actually cannot, my brain processing power cannot match the thing that's in my phone. No matter how much I think I can, I can't. And that relieved me a little bit. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.